Hi there, this is Dr. Camden. I am going live today with two authors of the book, The Myth of Good Christian Parenting, and get us going to talk about the book. Hey, Marissa.
Good morning. Hello.
Hi, Kelsey. Oh, it worked.
Hi.
Hey.
Good morning.
I've never done a live with three people, so that was different.
Yeah.
Love
I
you.
think it's pretty much the same. Okay.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, how are you guys today?
Good.
Good.
I don't know what your experience of launch day was, but it's just sort of like, okay, out it goes. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little anticlimactic. And so it's nice to be able to talk to you on your launch day and celebrate it with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Congratulations on your book, The Myth of Good Christian Parenting, just came out today.
It is. There it
Yay.
is. Yeah. Wild.
My book came out a year ago tomorrow, so October
I
15th.
saw you posting all the endorsements and stuff. That
Yeah.
seems like it was not that long. I just like, oh my gosh, it's already been a year.
I bet to you, but to me, it feels like a year.
It's been a year.
Yeah. What's that like having it have its anniversary or whatever?
Oh, yeah, it's just, it's been a year. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm glad it's behind me, but I did Instagram lives on my release day. I had scheduled like I think four of them or something. Like I
Wow.
just kind of wanted to do like a little virtual tour, and I felt like that was a good way to spend the day because you're a little anxious or just kind of, adrenaline, and so it was nice to have something on my schedule and, a way to kind of celebrate with people. So I'm glad to be able to do that with you guys.
Thank you so much. It is fun. It's like it's kind of weird because life just kind of keeps going. Like I'll go get
Yes.
my preschooler from preschool in like an hour here, and then just
Yeah.
be a normal day.
Yeah.
Had some grading to do this morning. I was like, yeah, okay.
It was my wedding anniversary yesterday. And so it's like this week is like big things, but very ordinary. Like,
Mhm.
just midlife anniversary where you're like, we can grab a coffee. Yeah, like and go for a walk. We can we can do that. And for the book launch, yeah, like we can do a half hour. That's great. But
Oh,
so exciting. Yeah.
good, good. Well, I know we just have 30 minutes together, so let's jump into it. And I want to first ask you, like, how did you end up writing this book together? Because I know you've been talking about it for a while. I've been following you guys, and we've become, online writer friends for a while about this. You've been researching this topic. So tell us about the writing and research evolution and the pairing of the two of you.
Mm. Yeah, I'll let Marissa start because she started it. It's her fault.
Uh, I think this book had been simmering in my imagination for a while. Some of that, I think, was being in pastoral ministry and seeing families navigating the fallout. Some of that was some work I was doing at the time researching for a novel set in the stay at home daughter movement. So I was kind of interested in the way theology enables abuse. And some of it was seeing church too in my own denomination and seeing parallels there in the way communities, families had been formed around certain ideas that were centered around power. And as a result, made it really difficult for people who had been injured by those ideas to tell their stories, to be heard, to find support. So all of this came together. And one day, a friend on Twitter, yes, good things happen on social media. So one day, a friend on Twitter tweeted out, like, if you could write a topic, if you had all the time in the world, what would you write about? This out into the void in whatever a single tweet's idea about it. And the response was pretty immediately, in this small Twitter group of like, yes, we need that. I would read that. Please write that. It struck a chord with people.
Mm-hmm.
That gave me enough of a boost to be like, okay, maybe this is something to my writing, like if it's just somewhere on there. And then I got a DM in my inbox.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah, so I saw her, her message on Twitter, gosh, 2 years ago now. And at the time, I was a relatively new writer, contributor to Christianity Today. I'd finished my doctoral work like a year and a half, 2 years before. And I'm not in like childhood education. I'm not in psychology. Those are not my fields, but I've kind of a through line in some of my work has been exploration of uses of media by American Christians. So how media forms evangelical communities and like how evangelicals use media to craft their identity. And this question around parenting books had been interesting to me for a while, since becoming a new parent, actually, because I ended up just kind of leaving behind all of the Christian parenting books that I had inherited, um, because I was so kind of troubled by them when my youngest was a baby. But I didn't really think that was my thing to do something with that information. My husband and I would sort of read these books and deep dive on them and write all these, things in the margins and be like, I can't believe these books are still in circulation.
Mhm.
But neither, I mean, we're both academics, but that's just not our area of expertise. So we just kind of left that there. But then by the time I saw Marissa's message on, or her tweet, I was kind of mulling over, maybe this is something I could comment on more publicly as a cultural historian, but I don't have the theological footing to tackle some of the theology questions I think you'd need to tackle in order to make the case that like
Mhm.
Ted Tripp is wrong when he says
Mhm.
the Bible mandates spanking, right? Like that's
Mhm.
I'm really interested in how people receive that information, what they do with that information, and
Mhm.
how evangelicals kind of grab onto that for a number of different reasons. But I really was so thankful to connect with someone who wanted to work on this, who had the theological footing to
Mhm.
tackle some of those questions, because that would have been far enough afield that was for someone else to do. So it ended up being a real like meeting of two different areas of expertise.
Yeah.
And we try to be pretty upfront about that in the forward to the book,
Mhm.
in the introduction to the book, that like we bring these two kind of specific
Mhm.
lenses and these two specific areas of expertise to this. We are not the people who are going to offer you parenting advice,
Mhm.
like that is for a family therapist, that is for people who have those kinds of credentials. But we can
Yeah.
at least look at these books and say, here's what's like under the surface that you might not know if someone just hands you a book by James Dobson or
Mhm.
Ted Tripp or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think your backgrounds and your areas of expertise were a great pairing for the book. It's not like a parenting manual. Yeah, it's not parenting advice, like you said. And it's
Mm.
not like kind of my area of expertise is like the psychological healing. And it's not really that focus either. It's more of the focus of like the journalistic and historical underpinnings of this approach to parenting, which is so helpful for us to have an understanding of that in order to then do the work of healing or of how do we parent and things like that. So this was a very needed resource to do some of that background work. And you guys put tons of research into this. I love a book with lots of endnotes. So very impressed with that. What were some of the most shocking or disturbing things that you read in your research? I know you've been sharing some memes on Instagram. What was maybe one for each of you that really hit you the hardest?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so many, honestly. I think reading so many resources one after another really gave that sense how bombarded Christian families were by this.
Mm.
Sure, a family maybe only picked up one or two resources, but seeing it, you saw how these ideas were hammered again and again and kind of recycled. The the authoritative weight of it. I mean, there's so many disturbing things when you read the prescriptions for spanking, when you read about parent-child relationships, when you read about prescriptions for manhood and womanhood and boyhood and girlhood. There's a lot there, but I think because it all came with just this heavy weight of like this God required and what you need to have like eternal security sometimes.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what comes to mind right now. What would you?
Um, Before I go, Marissa, is your phone leaning up against something with the speaker? Your microphone keeps on cutting out a little bit. Are you
Oh,
hearing that too, Camden, or is that just on my
here,
end?
I'll
I
just
hear
hold
it.
it. I'll just hold
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it might
Because I
something.
hear a little like squeaky thing. But good. I'm glad you say that.
Oh, that's better.
Should I
Okay,
repeat
It's
that
that's
better
or
now.
no?
Yeah.
Okay,
okay,
good.
much better now.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
just hold it.
Yeah, I think you know, two things come to mind. One is I found disturbing all of the different ways that these authors make the case that God commands parents to hit their children. Um, And all of the different kind of theological gymnastics or behaviorist language, all over time, different authors have kind of weaponized different ideas in order to sell Christian parents that this idea that they are commanded by God to inflict pain on their children to teach them something, to inflict physical pain. And that is just so entrenched, and it is treated as this timeless truth. But you see all of these different, very strange justifications, people kind of grasping at often kind of culture war related ways of making the case. I found that disturbing. And I also found it disturbing looking back at, I was familiar with James Dobson as a person, but I hadn't fully appreciated just how political so much of his parenting advice was. Like, I knew that his work became more political as he got older, that he engaged in a lot more political activism as he got older, but even you see it in his earlier works that I think people consider to be just sort of straightforward parenting advice. It just absolutely pulls on these parental fears and you sort of look at the world around you and look at the chaos, look at these delinquents, look at these kids walking down the street with piercings and colored hair. I mean, just like the things that he'll sort of throw out to say, like, you don't want your kids to be like that. You don't want your kids to be like that. You don't want to be like that parent that I saw on the bus that one day that had an out of control toddler. Like, just so much like ugliness, so much a lack of grace toward anyone that he's observing parenting, just sorry, that's a lot of answers, but those are the things that kind of stick out to me as like it was just troubling to read them, and to see that these are the people that are considered like the deliverers of the gold standard of evangelical parenting.
Yeah. And just the omnicompetence of them too. Like
Yeah.
how, like, oh my gosh, did you see this? I just saw this yesterday. Beth Allison Barr posted an excerpt to an article, an old World Magazine article that was talking about criticism of the gender neutral NIV that came out.
Yeah.
And I posted a little clip because there was this paragraph where she's like, James Dobson, he like spearheaded this initiative to tank that translation. And I just thought, if that doesn't encapsulate everything, Dobson, who has no credentials relevant, even remotely relevant to the field of translation, to interpretive work, to biblical studies, is like, oh, this pings like his preconceived alarm about something about gender confusion of gender categories or whatever his motivation is. And he spearheads this. And I thought that's so representative of what a lot of these kind of omnicompetent figures did, where their own opinions, their own perspectives, the things that were important to them became like God's voice for everyone. And wow, anyway, that was a little rabbit trail, but it's everywhere.
Yeah, I really appreciated y'all's exploration of like the politicalization of biblical parenting and how it became synonymous with the religious right and that whole movement. And also the how you call it liturgized spanking, like that there was a liturgy to it. I found that really compelling. Like I really liked that language and that way of describing it. So in the book, you get into some of the theology of things like authority and children's autonomy. You talk about sin and atonement, and of course spanking. So there's so many different like theological ones we could explore, but maybe we could pick one of those and just talk about like what are the teachings on that and how are they wrong from a theological perspective.
Yeah. I mean, they're all kind of tied together in really interesting ways. I don't know, Marissa, maybe you have other thoughts, but I mean, authority, the idea of authority is just so central. And it pops up in all of these resources in different ways. Chuck Swindoll, who's a megachurch pastor in California, wrote a book called The Strong Family. It went through a couple of different versions in the 80s and 90s, but he really comes out and says, parental authority is the first principle of Christian parenting. Protect and establish your authority and everything else will sort of follow. And Marissa did most of the heavy lifting on chapters on like gender and family hierarchy. And that's all tied together too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it draws on, I mean, you have the complementarian movement happening in the 1970s. That's a huge piece of this. Like
Yeah.
that was a driving force. You have the nouthetic counseling movement happening that was questioning external sources of expertise that viewed the
Mm-hmm.
Bible as an instruction manual for life. You have the inerrancy movement. These all are culturally Christian things of the time that are feeding into these resources, but become this kind of like context that this is all timeless, that this is all the way all Christians everywhere have approached the Bible. And it really muddies the waters as far as what is just a culturally Christian concept that's being recycled, but because the vocabulary is there, that this is biblical, or these kind of undefined theological terms will show up. So yes, when they're talking about authority, they'll draw in something like creation order, but almost in passing. So even if someone holds to that view, it's not parsed out. The same thing with sin. They'll just kind of talk about sin, but they won't
Original sin.
define it. They
Mm-hmm.
won't even often name original.
We lost you.
There you are.
Oh,
No, I can't.
no,
I can hear
Marissa, we
you.
lost your volume.
I can't hear Marissa.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes.
There we go.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
I have a little like time limit thing, and it just popped up.
Oh.
Like, you spent 30 minutes on Instagram. Yes, I have. I forgot to turn that off. Sorry.
I turned mine off before this too. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, that will show up, or like sin just as a category, or atonement theory, that it will be assumed that everyone holds to this rudimentary idea of penal substitutionary atonement. And I say rudimentary not as a not as a dig at it. It's one of multiple atonement theories, but it's not even like robustly defined. It will just kind of be like, yeah, we all know this is the gospel, or this is the cross, or this is sin. And unfortunately, I think that makes it really hard for devout people to think critically about these resources, because they're already in a vulnerable position. They do want to do right. Parenting is overwhelming. There's a lot at stake. And so in that moment, I think the readers, the audience for this, is particularly ill-equipped to be like, well, wait a second. Like, is this verse in context? You know what I mean? Like, that's just not the way people approach Christian self-help in general. So in that sense, it kind of exploits people's devotional sensibilities. I don't know what the authors were intending to do, but that's what comes across. And so a lot of these resources, they use a lot of Christian-y words and theological terms, but they're really impoverished as far as what they're offering. And then, of course, instead what's being offered is a bunch of people's opinions, but it has those labels. So it's just a pretty toxic cocktail of things.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that you and I have talked about before on your podcast, and that really became apparent to me as I read your book, was the parallels or similarities between purity culture and this form of biblical parenting. You know, when we talked on your podcast, it was like, what do these two topics have to do with each other? But they really kind of birthed out of the same time period and for similar reasons. Of course, they've got Dobson in common too. So, yeah, so I wondered, for my audience who's going to be really interested in that, what are some of the parallels that they'll be able to read in your book?
Yeah, I mean the fundamentalist orientation of a lot of this is very, is very apparent. The way that purity culture weaponizes the idea that there is the right way, that there is this tightrope that everybody is on, trying to pursue the biblical way forward in this. That is a way of speaking that is so easily mobilized, especially against young people, against young Christians who, I think of some of the resources you talk about that are geared to even like young men and young women, like teenagers, young adults who are like using these resources to kind of craft their sense of self and their relationship to God and to their community. I knew so many people who made kind of like I kissed dating goodbye, like their personality in high school, like it was like a real identity marker. And the same thing happens for young parents, like when you are so nervous about getting this right, like the stakes are so high, it is very easy to make a kind of rigid approach from someone that you trust, kind of your whole orientation toward your children, right? Like if a trusted voice like James Dobson, especially by the time it's like the 80s and 90s, he is like Dr. James Dobson. He is the voice that everyone trusts on family life.
Right.
You can kind of feel good as a Christian parent about like being a Dobson parent, right? Being a focus on the family.
Right.
And that, you know, like Marissa was saying, it's sort of like you can't, it exploits people's the way they come to these resources, like looking for something, looking for answers. And it's easy for some of the defenders of these resources to say, like, well, that's just people taking it too far. And that, I think, dismisses the tone and the pitch of these conversations and the level of anxiety people come to these resources with, and the kinds of answers that are being offered. When you call something biblical, you immediately raise the stakes of whatever it is you're talking about, because you're kind of claiming that there is a God's way, an evergreen, timeless truth way to come at all of these things. And for people who want to be devoted, on the straight and narrow, doing things the right way, that just, it's a recipe for, I don't know, a lot of scrupulosity is a word that Marissa uses a lot.
Yeah. And well, in both our books, we grab for the language of myth, right? And I think that captures so much, because a lot of these were illusions that were very attractive in a number of ways and made promises that didn't hold. And you unpack a lot of that in your book of like, actually the fruit of this was really destructive and left people picking up the pieces for a long time. And that is something we found too, as we surveyed and interviewed people. Like at this point, none of it's theoretical. Like maybe when parents were reading this stuff in the 70s or 80s, they were like, we hope this works. But now it's like we have generations of people saying, yeah, this was not good for my relationship with my adult children or with my parents. Like this bore destructive fruit. So I think that the kind of prosperity gospel pitch that was like, so everything will go well in your family life if you do this, was very similar in both of them. And it kept a lot of people trusting these messages only to be betrayed by them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We both use the language of myths and false promises. Yeah. Because of, that prosperity gospel. And we already mentioned like the gender roles, the hierarchy. Like I think those are both present in both, but, and really this control based, I say that, purity culture was the use of shame and fear to control and coerce, abstinence out of people. And I think that Dobson parenting, religious authoritarian parenting is control based, using shame and fear too. So yeah, they really go hand in hand in a lot of ways. And I like in the book how you said like this movement of deconstruction that a lot of us are going through or have gone through. Like a lot of that has to do with the parenting style we were raised with, like like you said, has not borne good fruit in our relationships with our parents either. I see a lot of strained, you say inauthentic relationships, and also estrangement, going low or no contact because of this parenting style, because parents cannot allow their child to individuate and have their own autonomy and their own identity and their own values and beliefs. And they're still holding on to that hierarchy and that need for authority. And so that's, led to these strained parent adult child relationships, but then also like strained in our faith because, when you're taught that like you're sinful and, you need to break your will so that you'll obey God, or I'm spanking you because God told me to, it's very confusing, for children, and really sets up like a poor, I think, attachment to God, as well. Yeah, as well as that poor attachment to parents. So a lot of similarities that I think, my followers will find interesting. But well, tell us now about like any kind of your hopes for the book, next projects you're working on, things like that, and then where you want people to connect with you.
Yeah. My hope for the book, it's been so lovely to see some early reader reviews come in. And I just read one this morning, and it like encapsulated my hope for the book, that people find their own experience reflected, that they find something named, that kind of first step we were talking about, like identifying, giving vocabulary for their experience, that they find resonance and also compassion for the people, the families, the parents, the others who were caught up in the pressure cooker. And I think, wow, we tried very intentionally to make this accessible to a number of people, with the goal of not heaping more shame, of not saying, we're here to tell you that now look at how everything you did was wrong, but instead to say, let's, with compassion and grace, let's look at this honestly. Let's take an honestly reckoning. Let's not shy away from the very real consequences of this. And also, let's do that in a posture of compassion and humility. And so to see that reflecting in people's reviews, that that's what they came away with, like feeling seen in their own story as an adult child, but also finding compassion for their parents. Wow. Like that felt like, oh, wow. My hope would be, that people would find touch points for their own story in a life-giving way, that it would be a healing and nourishing thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I think you just were talking about attachment, and I think my hope for the book is that it frees parents up to just like see the child in front of them and trust that they can be in relationship with this child. I think one of the saddest things about these books is that many of them sort of treat the possibility of mutual relationship with children as impossible, or just a non-starter, or something that will get in the way of you being able to discipline them correctly. And I think for some parents, that really robbed them of the opportunity to have a relationship with their children that was more authentic and loving and compassionate in the early years. Like, the little person in front of you is a person also, even though they aren't an adult, toddlers relate to the world differently, but that doesn't mean that relationship with them is impossible, or that too much love is going to get in the way of you raising them the right way. So many of these books will have asides to like, well, mothers, your impulse is going to be so soft on your kids, to be too compassionate, too empathetic, and just tells moms especially not to trust themselves. And so I'm hoping that our book at the very least can help parents trust themselves again and see their kids as unique individuals that they know how to respond to better than the writer of any book.
Yeah. And along with that, like, yes, that for those who still retain faith, who want to rethink their relationship with God, that they would find fresh space to relate to him in a new way, in a way that perhaps frees them up from seeing him like the angry parent kind of waiting for them to fail, that maybe invites them to connection with him. And that is, we both do have new books in the works, and that's a piece of my forthcoming book, which is tentative forthcoming. That makes it sound imminent, long down the road. Tentatively titled Spiritual Treadmills, How Christian Excellence Became a Heavy Yoke, I think is what it's titled. But yeah, again, similarly, really looking in different ways about how devotional practices contribute to that kind of like scrupulosity and drivenness. And Kelsey, you have one too, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. And it's, it'll be out in 2027. It's a book about how the wellness industry captures some of the language of cleanness, holiness, and kind of uses it to sell wellness to Christian women. So it's looking kind of, again, at the interaction between evangelicals and media, specifically focused, though, on the ways that diet culture and wellness is sold to Christian women using the language of their faith. And I'm in the research process for that right now. And I'm really, really excited for that to be out there, too, because that's a big part of my sort of own background story. It's not a memoir, but it is something that I've been turning over in my mind for a long time. So that will be coming out from Brazos in 2027. My writing is... you can find a lot of my writing on Christianity Today. I'm still a contributor there. I have a Substack too, where I think as this book starts to take shape, some of the pre-writing and research will end up there as well. So people can find me there, and obviously here on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're interested, we'll link to our interview with you, Camden. We did have a limited run podcast called In the Church Library where we did some more deep dives on some of these topics. But that was such a great conversation.
Yeah, yeah, that was really
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Well, that's so exciting to hear about your projects. I'm so happy for both of you and really interested to read both of those topics. They're both super interesting. So, yeah, so The Myth of Good Christian Parenting is the book. And I love you. Marissa sent me a little postcard and a
Yeah.
handwritten note and a sticker, which goes with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Love your smallest and newest neighbors. So I love
Mhm.
that. That was very nice personal touch. But yeah, I hope that my audience will check out the book and just see how much you relate to in it, and then how healing it can be to see your story kind of reflected and feel validated in that. So thank you for the work you've done, and congratulations on release
Thank you
day.
so much.
Thank you so much. This was
Yeah.
really fun. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. So good to see y'all. All
Good
right,
to
take
see you. We'll
care.
talk again soon. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.